Volume 7 of RWBY may have just finished up, but Volume 8 is going to be a direct continuation of the events we just saw. So, with that being the case, let's talk about what there is to expect in the coming volume. Now, it's stated that Volume 8 is going to be a direct continuation of Volume 7. All the volumes connect together and are continuations of one another, but this is the first volume where we've been left off, like, mid-conflict. Salem's army has just arrived at Atlas, and Volume 8 is going to continue that. Now, I question whether it's going to be Episode 1 starting off with Salem's army arriving right where literally the last second left off of Volume 7, because that, I hope, happens, but it's also possible that we might start off seeing the aftermath of what happened and then seeing the actual attack in flashbacks. I want to see the attack happen. That would be an amazing opening to Volume 7, but it's just something to be aware of that that's the route it might take. But, as for the beginning of the volume, what there is to expect is, death. People are gonna die in the coming volume. Salem didn't bring her army just to parade it around and show the power that she has. That's definitely part of it, but she's there to wipe out any opposition that she has. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean she wants to wipe out the entire kingdom of Atlas, and that's what her goal is. No, her goal is to get the relic, but also to pretty much possibly make them subservient to her, show the world that she is a power that cannot be beaten, and essentially rebuild her kingdom that she had in the past, that she had with Ozpin, that fell when her and Ozpin have a conflict. Now, I still wonder how that kingdom fell exactly, because Salem and Ozpin did lead the place, but after she killed Ozpin and the children as well, she could have formulated a story saying that, well, it was Ozpin's fault, he was the one who attacked me and ended up killing all the children as well, still led the kingdom and moved on past that. People may not have believed it, she may have tried that, but who exactly knows? But Salem's motivations are not, the exact wiping out of humanity. That could come as a result of her motivations, but Salem actually hates two things in this world: Ozpin and the gods. And Ozpin just returned in Oscar's mind, so that is going to be one of the main things that we can look forward to as well, is a conflict between Salem and Ozpin, hopefully a direct confrontation. But speaking of Ozpin, he also is going to have a confrontation with some other people as well. Well, in Oscar's body, so it's going to be Oscar and Ozpin having these confrontations, but there's also going to be a confrontation with Ironwood, because he's kind of gone off the rails, and now that Ozpin has returned, hopefully he'll be able to go back, and that conversation between Oscar and Ironwood, with Ozpin acting as a third party now, will hopefully end a little bit differently than what we saw in Volume 7, as it definitely didn't end very well for Oscar after James executed him. At least in his mind, that's what he thinks happened. Seeing Oscar again will be a surprise, but yeah. But as I mentioned, I think that people are going to die. Of course, people of Mantle and people of Atlas are going to die just as unfortunate casualties of Salem's attack, because it's not going to be just a complete surrender right out of the gate. People are going to fight back, soldiers at the very least are going to die, and there's going to be civilian casualties. But I think this is going to be the first volume where we are going to see a character we've come to know, not necessarily one of our main characters, hopefully not Team Juniper or Penny or anyone like that, but someone that we've come to know die within the first half of the volume, before the mid-season break that takes place around Christmas. I think this is going to be the first one where someone dies very early on, and unfortunately, I see that being either Pietro or Maria. Neither of which I want to die, but I can honestly see it happening. They didn't have that much of a role to play in Volume 7. Pietro was definitely significant, Maria was very significant in Volume 6, but since then, Pietro has seen the results of his daughter making friends, has seen how, she's come to become a real girl. She now has the maiden powers. She is happy with her friends, more happy than she was being subservient to the military. At least that's the way I see it. But Pietro, I think, is going to end up dying this volume. We already know that his aura is not in a great shape, and that he's, fairly sickly, it seems, because of that fact. So he's already not really in the greatest of states, but one thing we can't forget is the entire Pinocchio theme that's been going on throughout Volume 7 and will continue on during Volume 8, especially since the terrible dogfish, or Monstro, has now arrived in the form of Salem's giant black whale. If you're at all familiar with the story of Pinocchio, Pietro, or Geppetto, who's Pietro in this case, and Pinocchio, who's Penny in this case, end up eventually getting eaten by the big whale. At different times. First, it's Geppetto who gets eaten when he's going out looking for Pinocchio. Pinocchio ends up going missing, and Geppetto goes out to sea trying to find him, ends up getting eaten by the dogfish. Eventually, Pinocchio goes and rescues him. Now, this could be the case here that since they're on a manta ship currently, Pietro and Maria, since they probably don't have the ability currently that the rest of the huntsmen do to just bail out of a plane and be able to land okay, because Maria has gotten a bit older, and Pietro doesn't really seem to have the capability unless his chair has some hidden technologies within it. I would really like to see his chair actually show some fighting capabilities, as well as Maria show how badass she still is, even in her old age, but we'll wait and see if that actually happens. I could see their entire manta ship being swallowed, because this giant whale is absolutely massive. And then Penny, as well as some of Team RWBY and Team Juniper, would have to go into the whale to try to save them. Now, I see eventually Pietro or Maria ending up dying. Again, I don't want that to happen, but I can see it happen. And they end up, well, killing the whale from the inside is one possibility. But as I mentioned in my Volume 7 retrospective video, there's a different way to kill the whale. Now, we have Atlas, that is a mobile, giant, floating, let's say, iceberg, and this whale could be treated as the Titanic. Just clash them together. Both will probably be destroyed. Well, Atlas definitely would be destroyed. Hopefully it could deal a death blow to the whale, but honestly, with the size of that thing, I don't know if that would even be enough. Probably killing it from the inside is the only way. Whether Grimm actually have a heart or a core that can be used to kill them, it seems like beheading them works, so that seems to work like any other living creature. So maybe they have a heart, maybe they have internal organs. We don't exactly know at this point, but that seems likely. But if there is a death in Pietro and Maria, they're not going to be the only death that we see throughout this volume. Because there's some other characters that are, well, not in the greatest of states right now, or at least have a huge target on their backs. We saw at the end of Volume 7 that Watts is actually still alive. When Ironwood said that he was going to sacrifice anything it took to defeat her, to defeat Salem, he wasn't exactly convinced of that at that point. Now, he may have wanted to kill Watts, but left him alive for one reason or another, whether it was interrogation or trying to just get information about Salem, or thought that he could actually put him to use for some reason. We're not exactly sure. But he officially went off the rails upon seeing the glass figure of the Black Queen that Cinder left for him, so yeah, that's pretty much gone out the window, and he's willing to execute anyone, even Oscar, as I already pointed out. But I think Watts, although he does have a role to play, we will see more of him, hopefully a reveal of his semblance, which I do have some ideas on, but that's a different topic. He will possibly end up dead next volume as well. One person I do think is a lot more likely to end up dead, though, is Tyrian, because he's got a massive target on his back. We have Qrow, who is really going to be out for blood after killing Clover, someone that he got very close to throughout the volume, became his first friend, possible romantic interest. Like, this is going to be a conflict that is going to take place. In the Volume 7 opening, we saw Qrow and Robin fighting Tyrian. Now, that could have been hinting at Qrow, Robin, and Clover fighting Tyrian, but they just didn't want to spoil Clover was part of that fray. Or this could be hinting at Qrow and Robin targeting Tyrian himself for Volume 8, because both of them had a connection to Clover. Both of them liked Clover, even though Robin was on the other side of the law. I feel like both of them are still going to go out for revenge, and that conflict is going to happen. Whether they kill Tyrian or not, I don't exactly know, because I think Tyrian is destined to be killed by Jean. I made an entire video about that, because those two, you know, Tyrian took an interest in Jean since Volume 4, and I think that is going to come to fruition in Volume 8. But there's also another member of Salem's faction that's there, Cinder, who currently has the Relic of Knowledge. Now, Neo, not very happy with the treatment she's getting at Cinder's side, so there's going to be a conflict there. Whether Neo actually ends up stabbing Cinder in the back, I hope she literally does that and, you know, jabs her umbrella right into Cinder's spine, but beyond that, I don't think Cinder's actually going to die. It seems as though she's been set up since Volume 1 as this continuous character, possibly going to be the second in command or the second greatest evil in the story compared to Salem. But we'll see how that ends up playing out. We do know, though, that Cinder is probably going to bring the Relic of Knowledge to Salem to get back into her good graces. And when that happens, Salem is possibly going to use the last question of Jin. So we might get to see Jin again in Volume 8 as well. This is something that's going to be very interesting. We know there's one question left, so what question is it that Salem could be asking? Possibly, if she doesn't know how the rest of the relics work, then she could be asking questions like that, or what have you, because we know at the time that Ozma first reincarnated and he and Salem had that kingdom, he didn't know how the relics worked at that point. It wasn't until a later reincarnation where he asked Jin where the other relics were and what their powers were. So Salem probably at this point doesn't know either. So we could get a reveal of what the other relics are, what powers they hold, possibly what other genies or jinn or personalities the relics have, because I'm hoping that they do have that. And speaking of, we're going to get the Relic of Creation. As I mentioned, the Atlas is mobile and could crash into the giant whale to eventually end up killing it. Now, the only way to do this is with the Winter Maiden, who is currently on Team RWBY's side. Penny. So I think what's going to end up happening, because the Relic of Creation is going to have to be obtained at some point. So of course, Atlas is going to fall in Volume 8. I feel like that's pretty much a guarantee, whether it's used to actually take out the whale, or whether the whale itself just takes out Atlas. We'll see what ends up happening, but I think there was another thing hinted at in Volume 7 that's going to happen in Volume 8. Let's say Salem, occupies the city and pretty much takes it over. No one can really stand against her, because really, right now, the Aesops, not that they could do much against Salem's giant whale, they're currently still restrained in Atlas Academy, so it's not like they could help out the military or anything, take command in Ironwood and Winter's absence, because they're both, well, Ironwood's underground and injured. Winter is also in desperate need of medical attention, and the Aesops are just restrained. So military is kind of lacking command right now. Don't know how much they'd be able to stand up against Salem, but she's going to wipe them out anyways. But in Volume 7, RWBY had that one scene in Episode 4 where she said, "Are we going undercover?" And I think that's what's going to happen in Volume 8. They're going to have to sneak into Atlas, or back into Mantle or Atlas undercover, disguised as something else, so that they can get Penny into Atlas Academy and get her to the Relic. Whether Salem's just occupying the city, I would honestly love it if we see Salem just sitting at Ironwood's desk, and Ironwood's, just pretty much being forced to be subservient to her. That would be something interesting to see. The Aesops now, I'm sad to say, they are going to have to come to terms with Clover's loss. Clover was their leader, and whether they are going to have to reformat their team so that they have a new leader, whether Ironwood's going to join them as the leader of their team or whatnot, they are going to have to come to terms with that, and we're going to see more of the Aesops. Maybe start questioning orders more, maybe developing more as characters and seeing how they progress. Right now I can come up with actually a pretty good name for the team of 4, since we have Harriet, Vine, Elm, and Marrow. With taking their last names into account, they can be known as Team Haze, having Harriet as the leader, Marrow Amon as the A, Vine Zeki as the Z, and then Elm as the E. Seems like a pretty good name, and seems like it may unfortunately have been set up that way, but we'll end up seeing how that comes about. Then there's also the option of getting some more backstories in Volume 8, which I think the good and best candidates would be Cinder and Neo. Which also brings me to another topic that we're going to have Roman Torchwick return in Volume 8. I have a theory video planned for that, hopefully within the next week, maybe next 2 weeks, but Roman Torchwick, one way or another, is coming back in Volume 8. Whether it's as part of Neo's backstory or some other methods, which I will describe in that video, I think Roman is going to come back. And we're also going to explore Neo's character, how she ended up where she was, what her connection with Roman actually is, and where she came from. Similarly with Cinder, why does she desire power so much? Why does she hate the upper echelon of Atlas so much that they just hoard power from themselves and she refuses to starve, not having any of this power? Is that what gave her her drive to become as powerful, her hunger for power that much that she has right now? A lot of things that need to be answered. On top of that, Ren and Nora. What the hell is going on with Ren in Atlas? I've made a theory video on that as well, but it's something that wasn't actually concluded or really explored that much in Volume 7. That is something that is definitely going to be explored in Volume 8, and we'll have to see what ends up happening with that and how their relationship grows closer together. Currently, Renora is the most popular ship in the RWBY series. It has surpassed Bumblebee, as we found out, earlier last week. So, yeah, this is something that I'm curious to see how it plays out, and, we'll see what ends up happening. There's also one more character that I think is very likely to return in Volume 8, and that is Raven Bronwyn. Because of her semblance, kindred link, I think that's more than just portal creation. Those that she has close bonds to, I think she can connect to their emotions or feel what they, or some semblance of what they are feeling. And I think that's going to prompt her return. Again, I'm going to have another video on this specifically, but now that Ozpin has returned, I think that's another person Raven has a connection to. Plus, if she senses the despair that Qrow is feeling, maybe that'll prompt her return if she got back in contact with Tyrian, etc. I think Raven is coming back in Volume 8, as well as Roman Torchwick, etc. There's a lot of things that we can hope for and expect in Volume 8. There's going to be, obviously, a clash between Ironwood, Ozpin, hopefully Ozpin and Salem. Oscar is going to be in that mix as well, because, of course, he's going to be forced to be in that mix. Then Cinder and Neo going to have a conflict. Maybe we're going to get an Emerald and Mercury little side story. Now that Salem has taken most of her forces away from her citadel, it's going to be Hazel, Mercury, and Emerald. Hazel is kind of like a father figure to them. He's really only on Salem's side as a way to get back at Ozpin for, as he feels being responsible for killing his sister. I feel like he would let Emerald and Mercury go because he sees them as not being really meant for that purpose in life. To serve Salem, they're not really fit or cut out for that. Mercury likes to think he is, but, not really, and Emerald's really only there for Cinder. And I guess if Cinder rejoins the faction, then maybe Emerald will be more motivated to stick around. But after witnessing the horrors that Salem's created, I feel like they would separate out. And I feel like since we haven't seen them at all in Volume 7, Volume 8 is where we're going to touch on their characters a little bit more. Speaking of characters that need to be explored a little bit more, there's an entire family of characters I'm sure many of us want to see more of on screen in Volume 8. And I'm of course talking about the Schnee family, in particular Willow and Whitley Schnee, as we haven't really seen that much of them in the entire RWBY series. Willow only being shown on screen for the first time in Volume 7 and only having a speaking role in a single episode, and then Whitley, although introduced in Volume 4, hasn't really had that much development as a character or his relationship with Weiss throughout the 4 volumes in which we've known him. We know that, of course, he's not very fond of his sisters, and we find out in Volume 7 why that's the case, because Jacques is pretty much priming him to be a miniature version of himself with similar outlooks on how to manage a company, money, and the world itself, because Whitley was left alone under Jacques' influence. And we already know that Willow is pleading with Weiss to not forget about Whitley. Currently, that seems to be as though it's the case that Weiss is fleeing Atlas without remembering Whitley. I mean, given the situation, it's understandable. The entire military of Atlas is out to get them, but I can already see a scene taking place in Volume 8 where Weiss pleads with everyone who's currently on the Manta ship headed away from Atlas to turn around or at least drop her off so she can go rescue her family. Because currently, she's the only one on that ship that we know of who has family currently in Atlas as Salem's attack is coming. So she might go undercover to go to try to rescue them. Other people, of course, would go with her to try to rescue Willow and Whitley, etc. But, yeah, we don't know of anyone else with family, so Weiss, if she remembers about Whitley, will want to go back. And with Salem's army invading, the Schnee family is most certainly in danger, because although Salem's goals may not be to wipe out the entirety of Atlas, she's definitely going to want to eliminate all of those in power in Atlas, which of course would be the military, but also right up at the top of that list would be the Schnee Dust Company, and in particular, the Schnee family. So I can already see the Schnee family manor being overrun by Grimm and Willow standing her ground to protect Whitley and buy time for him to escape. This would probably and unfortunately be Willow's last stand, but would hopefully be a absolute badass moment where she displays some of her summoning and the capabilities that she once had earlier in her life. With her alcoholism and not practicing these abilities over probably a decade, they may not be as strong as they once were, and she would get overrun. I don't want to see her die, but, you know, realistically, I could see it happening and buying time for Whitley to escape. Maybe this experience would allow him to awaken his own semblance of glyphs, maybe revealing new glyphs that Whitley has, something different than Weiss or Winter, but also give time for Weiss to go back and rescue Whitley, find him in the chaos that is ensuing in Atlas, and get him away from there, and get him out of the influence of the Schnee family, and we'll see some bonding moments between them. Maybe Weiss will train him in the ways of glyphs, and we'll see possibly Oscar and Whitley eventually interact, because they're about the same age and coming from very different families. I'd be interested in how that conversation takes place. And also with the Schnee family, there's Winter, who I really hopes gets some medical attention and doesn't end up dying, because currently she's kind of left broken and bleeding as Salem's army is arriving, and I don't know if that medical support's actually going to make it there because they have a giant whale to worry about, but hopefully she survives, because, again, fan-favorite character, you know, we'll see. And also Jacques Schnee. I kind of have it in my head that Watts and Jacques are in cells right next to each other, and they're constantly passing notes back and forth or saying words to each other to eventually break out. So when Watts is broken out, maybe Jacques will be broken out as well. We'll see his character. I don't think there's any forgiveness in store for him for all the shit that he's done. Ironwood in his current state is definitely not going to forgive him. I doubt his family would offer him much forgiveness, but we'll see what ends up happening with that. Overall, though, there's a few characters that I do see ending up dead, or at least that I see having a decent likelihood of ending up dead. There's Pietro and Maria at the beginning, again, both of which I don't want to die. Tyrian and Watts, who I see dying at some point throughout this volume. They're going to die eventually in the RWBY series, I'm just laying that out there now, and Volume 8 might be the time for that to happen. Ironwood, if he continues down this path, might end up dead. Cinder, possibly, if Neo stabs her in the back. There's also the possibility that Neo may die, but if Neo dies, we riot, so hopefully that doesn't happen. And as well, with Winter and Willow Schnee, they might perish as well. Again, I don't want to see either of those two die, but Willow I see is more likely, and Winter hopefully will survive to eventually be the successor to Ironwood if he does end up dying. But still, a lot of stuff to expect. Hopefully Cinder and Neo backstory and all the things that are tied in with that. Hopefully we'll see Jin again as Cinder brings the relic to Salem. What Salem's going to do with that is a whole other question. Then how the hell are they going to defeat that whale? A lot of people are pointing to the Silver Eyes. Well, RWBY could just go up and silverize it. I don't see that as the case because this thing is massive, and we saw how well RWBY's Silver Eyes did against the Leviathan. She was able to essentially stun it or cover it in a shell of stone, but she didn't kill it or really damage it by any means, and that was with the help of Jin. She has not mastered her Silver Eyes yet, and we might get more of an explanation of how the Silver Eyes work, maybe more information on Summer Rose, but before RWBY will have the capability to take out anything as massive as the Black Whale, she's going to need to master the Silver Eyes more. Maybe she'll be one of the ones who hops inside the whale and petrifies its heart or something like that. That could be the case, and that could kill the whale, but petrifying the entire whale itself, probably not going to happen. Most of the things I discussed in this video, I will have separate theory videos on to delve into more detail of these topics, etc. But let me know what you guys think in the comments below, what you expect for Volume 8, how it's going to continue from the ideas introduced in Volume 7 and expand upon them in the future volumes, and what you think those expansions will be with Ren's character, with the Winter Maiden powers, how they are going to have to sneak into Atlas, what you think Salem's overall goals are going to be, whether she wants to just wipe everyone out, because Ozpin put his faith in humanity. Well, let's just destroy the thing you put your faith in. But, as I said, she hates Ozpin and hates the gods. All she wants to do is make Ozpin despair, because frankly she can't fully kill him, make him reincarnate, sure, but really she wants to destroy everything that he's put his faith in. humanity, the huntsmen and huntresses that he's, you know, kind of putting at the forefront right now, Team RWBY and everything, they've become Salem's target because of that. She wants to watch Ozpin's world burn. Not necessarily the entire world of Remnant, but, you know, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I'm really curious to see what you guys think is going to happen. The Relic of Creation is going to be taken, Atlas is going to fall, and beyond that, I don't know, fill in the gaps. Let me know. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you guys enjoyed and my ramblings make sense. Make sure to subscribe if you have not already and want to see some more RWBY content throughout the breaks between Volume 7 and 8, as well as continuing onward through the volumes of RWBY. Follow me at Phoenix Knight 7 on Twitter, and I'll see you guys in the next video.